Mina the Hollower has been a very long time coming, and this modern retro combination of Zelda with Souls-like is perhaps one of the most challenging and also one of the most frustrating games you could possibly play with pixels today. When powerful devices known as spark generators are being disabled on an island, it's up to Mina to return there in order to repair them and discover what is happening. And over the course of the game, we're going to fight, die a whole lot, and possibly uncover a very nasty conspiracy along the way. There is a lot going on with Mina. You may think by just watching footage that this is just your standard action-adventure Legend of Zelda style. This game features a very challenging combat system that, as I said in the Singer, brings it into the territory of Souls-likes. When you begin, you'll choose from one of 3 different weapons. There are more you can find throughout the world. Each weapon has its own kind of unique play style to it. I went with Big Old Hammer because I like doing massive damage, but you can also use very quick blades, a kind of gun club combo, a casket shield, and more. And the 2 different upgrades you can find for each weapon kind of adds more functionality to it, but it doesn't quite change how the weapon behaves. And everyone is going to have their own preferred weapon by the time they get through this one. The structure here, though, is quite non-linear. There are 6 areas you have to explore in total, 5 of which you can do in any order, but the last one requires you to complete all the previous ones first. Each area has its own color palette, enemies, challenges, and a variety of very interesting and very hard bosses to beat. You'll also collect bones, which apparently this entire island runs on a bone-based economy, which could probably explain why so many people are grave digging in it. When your bones hit a certain threshold, you will bone up, which will allow you to level up in one of 3 categories: your defense, your attack, or the amount of damage your sub-weapons do. And Mina borrows a page from Castlevania that you'll find and acquire a variety of sub-weapons. Each one is quite powerful, and there's definitely some advanced play in terms of knowing which sub-weapon to bring into the right area to allow you to either just sequence break certain spots or quickly deal with a specific and nasty enemy. You'll also find trinkets, and this is this game's version of the artifact/passive system. You'll be able to equip up to 5 you can find all necessary upgrades, and each one provides a very important and very specific utility or change. One allows you to get like a little extra like hover on your jumps, which if you do it right will allow you to get past pits further than you would otherwise. Some will give you more damage, change your ways of doing damage, and etc, etc. Now with that said, you're going to need all this, as combat is quite difficult, and a lot of that comes down to the defense and healing options. Mina has 2 ways of avoiding damage: jumping over attacks, and hollowing, which is just basically burrowing under the ground and then emerging a few seconds later. You do not have infinite burrow, and you'll pop out automatically after a few seconds, which means you have to be very careful in terms of maneuvering under the ground. You'll also be able to do hollowing in other areas, which is part of the movement tech and quote-unquote puzzles of the world. With that said, getting hit is far more punishing than you might think. First, enemies do a lot of damage, and by the end, even if you are fully upgraded in terms of health and defense, they can still take a really huge chunk of your health. In order to heal, you must use plasma vials, and this is where the game gets very nasty in terms of how combat works. If you are hit, not only do you lose health, but you lose your accumulated plasma based on the amount of damage. And since plasma equals your ability to heal, you can easily get into this feedback loop of take a hit, try to recover your plasma, get hit again, try to recover it again, and you're dead. And it leads to a lot of the frustrations that the combat has in Mina. And it's still very much up in the air as to whether or not things will be balanced. Who knows, there may be a balance patch by the time this review goes up. But as I said in the opening, Mina is a very frustrating game to play, and part of that again is the combat system. I just do not like how healing and defense works. and it leads to kind of the most common ways that I died during my playthrough of it. The first way is that enemies can do contact damage, and your iframe on hit is so minuscule that you can easily take another hit from the enemy before you can even process that they ran into you. So what ended up happening is enemy approaches from the kind of diagonal or ordinal direction, which all your attacks, or at least the hammer, can only attack in the cardinal ones. So they hit me, I try to realign, they hit me again, I can't heal because I don't have any plasma, and I'm dead. And there are very fast enemies in this game, not only fast moving, but with very fast attack patterns. The other way is with extra large enemies, who will track you even when you're in hollowed. So what happens is I go to dodge, I'm in the ground, the enemy is tracking me, and when I pop up, their hitbox is already on me and I take damage. On top of that, whenever you try and hollow, you must jump first, and that little, almost like half second that you're in the air is going to get you killed a lot, because it means you can't just kind of hollow, pop out, and hollow again. There's a trinket for that, and that will come back to a complaint in a few minutes. But you're always going to be in the situation where you have to adjust about half a second earlier than you would normally do in any other game. And I had plenty of cases where I know the enemy's about to attack, I see the attack animation coming, but it's too late to dodge, because by the time I jump and hollow, the attack is already going to be initiated. And some enemies, especially some of the more advanced ones, will have multi-string attacks, and good luck trying to dodge them when you're also trying to get the hollowing done. And the game will put you through many different gauntlets. While there is a huge focus on combat, platforming is also a big point, and there are, believe you me, some very nasty platforming. You'll have to do platforming while you're dodging projectiles, dodging enemies, dodging traps, dodging all the above. And one thing this game does that also really annoys me, typically in any kind of action-adventure game, you fall into a pit, you will appear at kind of like the last safe ground that you were on. In this game, that doesn't happen. If you fall into a pit, you get sent back to kind of like the quote-unquote, I guess, like checkpoint in that room, which can be sometimes a few screens back. It could be back for all the nasty traps you avoided the first time. And this is going to get very nasty in some of the later sections. The trinket system itself works, but as I said a moment ago, it also presents another issue. That the trinkets themselves, in a way, feel like more of a band-aid fix of some of the issues I had. So, not having enough plasma to get my health back, there's a trinket that gives you more plasma. Being able to, again, keep hollowing as you pop up, there's a trinket for that. And what ended up happening was that all the trinkets that I used, most of them were just me trying to make the combat and the movement feel better in my hands, which meant that I couldn't really experiment with anything else. And while this game features a very, and I do mean very, extensive assist mode modifier feature, it does feel a lot like them trying to put a band-aid on the kind of frustration that the game has. And the modifiers themselves really run the spectrum of making the game easier, making it harder, making it weirder. Someone will do the screen rotating challenge, I think, at some point, and that is not going to be me. But with Mina the Hollower, by the end of this game, I didn't feel like I was getting better at it. I just felt like I was more or less getting accustomed to the BS that the game throws at you. There are a lot of cases where just like very slight changes, I think, would make things far more playable. So even just having like a momentary iframe when you pop out of the ground would do wonders for just being able to avoid some of these hits. The whole losing plasma, again, like, is just a very frustrating deal, especially when you're fighting bosses who hit very hard, and conversely, will take more of your plasma on each strike. Speaking of, I almost forgot, the amount of time to heal by drinking a vial is very long for a game like this. But don't worry, there's a trinket that speeds that up for you. The onboarding of this game is also being called into question, as there are some things that the game doesn't quite tell you, or that doesn't quite give you like a good push forward. And there are two spots in the game that I'm not going to spoil here that I did not get the clue that the game was trying to provide, and made me miss some very critical sections. And what's very frustrating about that is, in terms of even more quality of life features, there's a lot hidden by repairing the Hollowers Guild. Earlier in this video I mentioned how sub-weapons are very powerful. When you die, you lose your equipped sub-weapon, and sub-weapons by default only appear at specific points in the world. So let's say you have a really good weapon that you love, but it's 4 sections or 4 areas back, and you died. Guess what? You have to go all the way back there to get it, to then go all the way back to where you started. However, once you complete the Hollower Guild's quests, you'll be able to get an upgrade to your base that will enable you to preserve your sub-weapon. It is such a game-changing upgrade that really takes a lot of the sting out, but until you get it, be on guard. And there's just so many examples of how the game just feels like it's been designed to just like twist the blade in on every death, on every frustrating hit, on every missed platform, and it just felt again like it was becoming more and more frustrating to play. And I know there's gonna be people who will complain in the comments about how they found the game easy, they did the whole thing on their first go, they never died, but in a world where people complain the heck out of the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, I'm surprised I'm not seeing more pushback from critics. Because I feel like if you don't criticize Mina the Hollower for kind of the frustration in the game's design, then you really are not allowed to criticize any From Software Souls-like for the end of time. And in many ways, and this is probably going to come back to bite me when I say this, Mina the Hollower feels like a game that takes all the wrong lessons from Souls-like design, in terms of the level design, in terms of the structure and pacing, and in terms of how a good combat and defensive system has to work. Because it just felt like there are cases where I can't avoid this attack. Like, it comes too fast, it comes at an angle that I can't jump over. If I try to hollow, it's too slow, and even if I do manage to hollow, then it will just run or dash or charge right into me, and then I take more damage. And I do think it's going to be a shame that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to bounce all this one, because the world design is really great and varied. There are some very hilarious and interesting side quests to do in this one. The pixel art is fantastic as well as the music. And there are just some really like impressive like pixel art and animation, especially some of the later boss fights. And the game's ending definitely leaves a lot of room for maybe DLC or more to come in the story, and I would play it and of course go through it kicking and screaming and dying in the future. All in all, if you're going into this game thinking it's just going to be another modern retro throwback, very casual Zelda-like, Mina Hollower is not that. You're going to be getting a lot of pain and punishment by playing this one. And if you don't mind that, then this is going to be a very lengthy and very varied title to play. So with all that said, Mina the Hollower was played with a retail key. I am very, very curious to hear what you think about this one, especially if you did manage to beat it. And what you thought of the game's, like, again, more nastier sections that pop up. Let me take your game for a future stream and video. Does not involve hollowing, Mina, or frustration. Be sure to get in touch. And with that, come back for more discussions on game design and indie games here on Game Wisdom. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.